Deputy Sheriff Wade Pritchard of Harlan County noticed the SUV at 7:40 a.m. on October 12, 2023. A black Jeep Grand Cherokee was pulled over on the shoulder of Log Hollow Road, an old logging road that hadn't been maintained since the 1980s. Ohio plates. Pritchard slowed down and keyed his radio. The vehicle wasn't locked. The keys were still in the ignition. A thin layer of dust coated the dashboard. On the back seat, a leather briefcase, 2 cell phones with dead batteries, a laptop in a sleeve, and a case of bottled water. 4 bottles untouched, 2 empty. In the glove compartment, registration papers in the name of Caleb Richards, age 30, Cincinnati, Ohio. Pritchard walked around the SUV. No signs of an accident, no damage. The doors opened and closed normally. He checked the briefcase. Inside were printed cadastral maps, a land purchase agreement, and business cards for a logging company, Appalachian Timber Holdings. On one of the maps, a parcel north of the road was circled in red marker, 70 acres along the edge of an area known locally as Widow's Log. Dispatch, I've got an abandoned vehicle on Log Hollow, mile marker 4. Ohio plates, Charlie Mike Victor 7312. Need a registered owner check. The response came 3 minutes later. The vehicle was registered to Caleb J. Richards, Cincinnati. No bolos, no warrants, no missing person reports. Pritchard called the sheriff. By noon, 3 patrol vehicles were parked along Log Hollow Road. Harlan County Sheriff Douglas Mosley personally inspected the SUV, while his deputies canvassed the area within a half-mile radius. 4 days, Mosley said, staring at the water bottles. Maybe 5. That dust didn't settle overnight. A call to Appalachian Timber Holdings clarified things. Regional Manager Peter Hancock confirmed the company had been negotiating to buy land in Harlan County. The sellers were brothers, Caleb and Noah Richards. Their last contact was October 8th, when the brothers said they were heading out to the property for a final boundary check. The deal was scheduled to close on October 11th. The brothers never showed. "Why didn't you report this immediately?" Mosley asked. "We did, yesterday. We called Cincinnati PD." Mosley checked. The report from Appalachian Timber Holdings had been filed on October 11th at 4:30 p.m. Eastern. Cincinnati police classified it as adults who failed to show for a meeting, low priority. In Cincinnati, the Richards brothers were known as partners at the architectural firm Richardson and Richards Design. The irony of the name didn't bother anyone. Clients often confused them with a much larger firm, and that worked in their favor. Caleb handled negotiations and contracts. Noah handled the technical side, drawings, calculations, permits. They specialized in suburban commercial development, strip malls, parking lots, office complexes, work that didn't require inspiration, only precision. Over 8 years, they built a reputation for one thing: they met deadlines. Their personal relationship followed the same model: efficient, unsentimental. They grew up in Dayton, middle class. Lost their parents in a car crash when Caleb was 22 and Noah was 20. Insurance money and the sale of their parents' house gave them startup capital. From then on, they functioned like a single unit. Their wives learned about the disappearance from Sheriff Mosley. "He said 2 days, max," Caleb's wife Emily Richards recalled. "I wasn't even worried. Caleb always comes back on time. Always." Noah's wife Megan Richards added something investigators noted separately. Noah hated nature. He used to say the woods were just land that hadn't been developed yet. This trip was a formality to him. Drive out, take photos, sign papers. The inheritance came out of nowhere. In March 2023, a notary from Lexington contacted the brothers about the will of Lester Richards, a cousin of their father who had died that January. They barely remembered him. One childhood visit when their dad took them to see relatives in the mountains. Caleb was 10, Noah 8. They spent a weekend in Kentucky. Lester struck them as a strange, quiet old man who lived in a cabin with no TV and spoke with an accent they could barely understand. 30 years later, that old man left them 70 acres of land. "We checked the assessed value," Caleb wrote in an email to a realtor. "The land itself is worthless. Bad terrain, no utilities, the road barely exists. But the forest, that's timber. We found a buyer. Appalachian Timber Holdings offered $340,000 for logging rights. The brothers were satisfied with the price. The only condition, the boundaries had to be confirmed on site. The logging company required precise coordinates before signing. The brothers flew to Lexington on October 7th, rented an SUV, and drove toward Harlan County. The plan was simple: meet a local surveyor, walk the perimeter with GPS equipment, and be back in Cincinnati by October 10th. The surveyor, Roy Ellison, 62, told investigators the meeting was canceled. They called the morning of the 8th, Ellison said. Said they'd handle it themselves. They had a drone with GPS. Thought that was enough. I didn't argue. That was the last confirmed contact with the Richards brothers. The area got its name in 1931 after a collapse at Mine Number 7, owned by Appalachian Coal and Coke. The mine had been operating since 1908, pulling bituminous coal from a seam that ran beneath the entire valley. By 1930, it employed 340 men, nearly every able-bodied adult male from the surrounding settlements. On the morning of February 14, 1931, a crew of 89 miners descended to the lower level. At 11:47 a.m., methane ignited. 7 bodies were recovered. The remaining 82 were never brought out. The mine was sealed. The entrances were filled in. And the valley became known as Widow's Log. By the 1940s, the settlement was gone. The widows either moved away or died. The children grew up and left for the cities. The houses were dismantled for lumber. The roads stopped being maintained. And then came kudzu. Pueraria montana, the vine that ate the South, was introduced to the United States from Japan in 1876 as an ornamental plant. By the 1930s, it was being planted to prevent soil erosion. Kudzu grew fast, up to a foot a day during warm seasons. It wrapped itself around trees, buildings, power lines. By the 1970s, the Department of Agriculture officially labeled it an invasive species. By then, it was too late. Widow's Log was swallowed completely. Detective Melanie Croft studied satellite images of the area inside a mobile command unit set up at the entrance to Harlan County. On the screen was nothing but green. No roads, no clearings, no buildings. Just an endless blanket of leaves beneath which the contours of hills barely showed through. "You can't search this from the air," said Neil Brannon, the search and rescue coordinator. "A helicopter is useless. Under that cover, there could be sinkholes, pits, old structures. Dogs are the only option." A team of 12 volunteers and 4 K9 handlers began the search on October 14th at 6:00 a.m. Starting point: the brothers' SUV, direction north toward the boundary of Lester Richards' land. Lester Elmer Richards was born in 1941 in Harlan County, the son of a former miner who lost a leg in an accident at Mine Number 5 and spent the rest of his life on disability. Lester finished 8 grades of local school. He worked briefly at a sawmill, then on a farm, then nowhere at all. In 1965, he inherited 70 acres of inconvenient land on the edge of Widow's Log, a parcel no one wanted. He lived on that land for the next 58 years, alone. Neighbors, the few who still lived in that part of the county, saw him rarely. Once a month, he drove into town in an old pickup, bought groceries and gas, sometimes stopped at the post office. He didn't talk, didn't complain, didn't ask for help. He paid his property taxes on time. "Strange guy," said Roy Ellison, the surveyor the brothers canceled on. "I worked out there a couple of times, saw him watching me from a distance. He didn't wave, didn't say anything, just watched until I left." Lester Richards died on January 7, 2023, in his cabin. His body was discovered 3 weeks later by a mail carrier after he failed to pick up a package of prescription medication. Cause of death: heart failure. He was 81. The will was found in June when the county attorney reviewed his estate. The sole heirs were the sons of his cousin William, Caleb and Noah Richards of Cincinnati, Ohio. Detective Croft reached Lester's cabin on the first day of the search. The structure sat half a mile from the edge of the kudzu growth, on the only cleared patch of land in the area. A 1-story wooden house, tin roof, a generator in the backyard. Inside, minimal furniture, a wood-burning stove, shelves of canned food, no television, no internet, no signs of modern life. On the table was a folder of documents, utility bills, store receipts, medical prescriptions. As Croft flipped through the papers, she found something else, an unstamped envelope with a single name written on the front: Earl. Inside was a handwritten note. As usual, by the 15th, there was no date. Croft photographed the note and placed the envelope into an evidence bag. By the evening of October 14th, the search dogs lost the trail. The team had covered 1.5 miles along an old path leading north from where the SUV was found. At the edge of the kudzu growth, the dogs stopped. Rex, a German shepherd and the state's top tracking dog, whimpered and refused to move forward. "It happens," handler David Holloway explained. "If a trail is older than 3 or 4 days, the scent breaks down. But this isn't that. Rex didn't lose the trail. He's afraid of it." Croft looked at the wall of green in front of them. Kudzu climbed 15 to 20 feet high, wrapping trees all the way to their crowns. Beneath the vines, it was dark, even though sunset was still hours away. The sounds changed too. Birds went silent at the edge of the growth. "We go in tomorrow," Croft said. Machetes and GPS beacons. Every 100 meters we mark. Brannon nodded, though his expression said what he didn't voice aloud. You could search that green mass for months and find nothing. The Kentucky State Police Digital Forensics Lab is located in Frankfort, about 2 hours from Harlan County. The drone's memory card arrived there on October 17th at 9:00 a.m. By noon, technical analyst Donald Young contacted Detective Croft. "We've got video," he said. "You need to see this in person." Croft left immediately. The recording was 47 minutes and 12 seconds long. Metadata showed the drone had been launched on October 8th at 2:23 p.m. local time. The takeoff point was 200 meters north of where the brothers' SUV was later found, right at the edge of Lester Richards' property. The first 20 minutes were standard surveying footage. The drone climbed to an altitude of 120 meters and began circling the perimeter along a pre-programmed route. The camera captured an uninterrupted carpet of kudzu with faint outlines of terrain beneath it, hills, ravines, depressions. The GPS module logged coordinates every 3 seconds. At 21:34, the drone hovered over a point near the center of the property. The operator switched to manual control and began descending. "Here," a voice said off camera. Low, calm, confident, Caleb Richards. "You see that opening? Bring it down lower." The drone dropped to 30 meters. The camera picked up a break in the green, a clearing roughly 40 feet in diameter, surrounded by a wall of kudzu. 2 people stood in the center. "That's them," Young said, pausing the footage. On the screen, frozen in place, were the Richards brothers. Caleb in a blue jacket, Noah in a gray hoodie. Both were looking up at the drone. Young hit play. For the next 19 minutes, the brothers worked. Noah hammered orange survey stakes into the ground while Caleb checked a tablet displaying the property map. The drone circled overhead, recording everything. Their conversation was only partially audible. The drone's microphone was designed for telemetry, not dialogue, but fragments could be made out. Boundaries shifted east. Noah. Doesn't match the records. Caleb. Maybe the old guy moved the markers. At 38:47, Noah stopped near the northern edge of the clearing. He stared at the ground. "Caleb, come here." His brother walked over. They both looked down for a few seconds. Then Caleb crouched and began clearing grass away with his hands. "This is concrete," he said. "Something's buried here." They worked for another 3 minutes, uncovering a section of ground roughly 6 by 4 feet. Beneath the sod and leaves was a concrete slab with a metal cover in the center, circular, about 2 feet across with a recessed handle. "Looks like a hatch," Noah said. "Old, maybe part of the mine? Doesn't matter, it's on our land." "Document it." Noah pulled out his phone and started taking pictures. Caleb tried lifting the cover, but it wouldn't budge. "Rust seized. Need tools." "Leave it. We'll show the logging company. Let them deal with it." Caleb stood up. At 41:52, he froze and turned toward the kudzu. "Did you hear that?" "Hear what?" "I don't know, like a click." Noah shrugged. "Didn't hear anything. Let's wrap it up. It's getting dark." They went back to work. Caleb drove in the final stake while Noah checked the tablet. At 44:30, Noah took a step backward and vanished. Young rewound the footage and switched to slow motion. On the screen, Noah Richards stood at the edge of the concrete slab. He stepped back with his left foot. The ground beneath him collapsed. It didn't crumble. It didn't sink. It dropped out completely, as if there were nothing underneath. Noah fell straight down and disappeared from view in a fraction of a second. In his place was a black opening with perfectly clean edges. "Stop," Croft said. Young paused the video. The image froze on the pit, rectangular, roughly 3 by 4 feet. The edges weren't jagged like a natural cave-in. They were precise, geometric, like a hatch. "This isn't a sinkhole," Young said. "This is mechanical. Someone built a trap." Croft nodded. "Keep going." The next moments were chaotic. Caleb rushed to the edge, dropped to his knees, screamed his brother's name. No response. Either Noah didn't answer or the drone didn't pick it up. "Noah! Can you hear me?" Caleb lay flat and looked into the hole. Then he stood, scanned the clearing. His face showed not fear, but confusion, the look of someone who couldn't understand what reality had just done to him. At 45:07, he made a decision. "Hang on, I'm coming down." He sat on the edge, lowered his legs, and jumped. The drone hovered above an empty clearing. 2 survey stakes jutted from the ground. The black pit gaped open at the center. Caleb's tablet lay face up in the grass. Silence. The recording continued for another 2 minutes and 5 seconds. Then the drone, likely following its programmed return, turned and headed back toward its launch point. It never made it. At 47:01, the camera jolted. Leaves flashed across the screen. Impact. The drone became tangled in the crown of an oak tree, where it was found 8 days later. "Rewind to the click," Croft said. Young rolled the footage back to 41:50. The moment Caleb said, "Did you hear that?" Young pulled up a spectral analysis of the audio track. "Here," he said, pointing at a spike. 0.4 of a second before he speaks. Frequency around 2000 hertz. Short impulse. "Can you isolate it?" "Already did." He played the cleaned clip. A dry metallic sound, sharp, distinct. "That's a bolt," Croft said. "Someone chambered a weapon." Young nodded. Directional mic places the source southeast of the clearing, 30 to 50 meters out. Someone was in the brush, watching them. Croft stared at the frozen image of the clearing, empty, except for the black hole at its center. "The brothers found something they weren't supposed to find," she said. "And someone knew it." The concrete slab turned out to be much larger than it appeared in the drone footage. Once the kudzu was cleared away, investigators saw that the structure covered an area roughly 20 by 30 feet, a rectangular platform poured with coarse concrete, cracked by time and split by roots forcing their way through the surface. At its center was the round hatch the brothers had discovered. 4 feet away gaped a second opening, the rectangular pit with clean edges, the trap Noah had fallen into. Forensic technician Rachel Moran examined the rim. "This isn't a collapse," she said. "See this? A metal frame, hinges on one side, the lid drops inward under body weight. Classic pit trap, just oversized, too big for animals." Croft crouched beside the opening. Darkness swallowed the beam of her flashlight after 10 or 12 feet. "Depth?" "Echo sonar says 58 feet to the bottom," Moran replied. "Vertical shaft." "A ventilation shaft," said Greg Walsh from the Forestry Service, flipping through old mining maps. "Mine number 7, shut down in 1931 after the explosion. According to records, all access points were sealed." He paused. "Someone dug this one back out and modified it." The descent began at 7:00 a.m. on October 20th. First down was Marcus Jennings, a rescue specialist certified for underground operations. He wore full gear, helmet lamp, harness, gas detector. They lowered him by winch through the hatch, not the trap pit. The hatch opened easily despite the rust. Someone had been using it regularly. Jennings' radio transmitted everything. Radio. "Vertical shaft. Timber supports along the walls. Old wood, but there's been maintenance. Newer boards, metal braces. Someone's kept this structurally sound." "What's at the bottom?" Croft asked. "Stand by. Contact. I'm down." A few seconds of silence, then Jennings's voice changed. "There's a chamber down here, large, and there's light." Jennings stood in a tunnel about 7 feet high and 10 feet wide. The walls were rough stone, original early 20th century masonry. The floor, however, was new, poured concrete, cracked in places but unmistakably modern. Along the left wall ran an electrical cable in protective sheathing, feeding a line of LED lights. "The lights are on," Jennings said, "which means there's a generator somewhere. Someone's buying gas. He moved east, following footprints visible in the dust. I've got foot traffic, a lot of it. Different shoe sizes, different tread. Tunnel splits in about 30 meters. Left branch is bricked up, right branch is open. I'm taking the right. The tunnel sloped downward. After 50 meters, it opened into a large chamber, once a coal extraction room. Now it served a different purpose. Jesus Christ, Jennings breathed. What is it? Croft asked. A grow operation, professional, hydroponics, lighting rigs, ventilation. I'm counting at least 200 plants. He paused. Marijuana, each plant about 3 feet tall. Harvest ready. By noon, 4 more people descended into the mine. 2 DEA agents from Lexington, forensic tech Moran, and Detective Croft herself. Sheriff Mosley stayed topside, coordinating the perimeter. The plantation occupied 3 connected chambers totaling roughly 400 square meters. The setup was semi-industrial. Drip irrigation systems, high-pressure sodium lamps, carbon filters for odor control, fans pushing fresh air through old ventilation shafts. DEA agent Leroy Watkins estimated the operation was producing $2 to $3 million worth of product annually. This has been running at least 10 years, Watkins said, examining the equipment. Wear on the wiring, the pipes, maybe longer. Somebody planned this very carefully. Croft wasn't listening. She stood at the mouth of a 4th tunnel, narrow, branching off from the main chamber and disappearing into darkness. Where does this go? She asked. Watkins shrugged. We haven't gone down there. Priorities documenting the grow. Croft turned on her flashlight and stepped into the passage. The tunnel ran about 40 meters. The ceiling dropped lower. The walls tightened. The floor here wasn't concrete. It was packed earth, worn smooth by decades of use. There were fewer footprints. This route wasn't used often. The tunnel ended in a small chamber carved directly into the rock. Croft stopped at the threshold. 6 bodies lay along the far wall. 3 were skeletonized. 2 were in advanced decomposition. 1 was relatively recent, perhaps a few months old. Kudzu roots had grown through the chamber ceiling and wrapped around the remains. White tendrils coiled through bones, threaded through rotting fabric, sank back into the soil. The vine that ate the south had found fertile ground. Croft exhaled slowly and raised her radio. Watkins, Moran, I need both of you down here, and call the medical examiner in Frankfurt. She paused. We've got a mass grave. Over the next 48 hours, mine number 7 became one of the largest crime scenes in Harlan County history. The bodies were recovered one by one, tagged, and sent to the state forensic lab. Preliminary analysis showed the oldest remains were roughly 15 years old. The newest were 4 to 6 months old. Identifying the first 3 victims took a week. All 3 had been reported missing in different states: Tennessee, Virginia, North Carolina. All 3 had ties to drug trafficking, 1 low-level dealer, 2 couriers working for rival networks. They tried to encroach, Watkins said during a briefing on October 23rd, and they were eliminated. This wasn't just a grow. It was a fortified operation. Someone protected this business aggressively. Croft listened in silence. She was thinking about something else. The Richards brothers. They hadn't just found a plantation. They'd found a cemetery. They were witnesses no one could afford to let go. They're alive, she said finally. If they wanted them dead, they'd have killed them right there in the clearing. But they didn't. She looked around the room. They took them. The question is, why? No one answered. The search warrant for the Bowen farm was signed by a Harlan County judge at 6:00 p.m. on October 24th. By 8:00 p.m., a 14-person team, state police, DEA agents, and sheriff's deputies, moved into position. The farm sat at the end of a dirt road, about 1.5 miles from the highway. A 2-story frame house, 3 outbuildings, 2 pickup trucks in the yard. Lights were on downstairs and in one of the barns. No dogs barked. The Bowens didn't keep dogs. Croft watched the house through binoculars from 300 meters out. How many? She asked Mosley. Earl. 3 sons, Wesley Carter, Jr., 2 nephews, Lyle and Brandon. Earl's wife died 8 years ago. No women, no kids. Just men. Weapons? Hunting rifles for sure. Earl and Wesley have permits. The rest, unknown. This is Kentucky. Half the houses around here have guns. Croft lowered the binoculars. We go in at 9. 3 teams, front door, back door, barn. Priority is arrests, not shootouts. I need them alive and talking. At 9:00 p.m., 3 black SUVs rolled onto the property simultaneously. A loudspeaker ordered the occupants to come out with their hands raised. No response. The front entry team breached the door at 9:03. The house was empty. 6 plates sat on the kitchen table, mashed potatoes, gravy, green beans. The food was still warm. They knew, Watkins said, scanning the rooms. Someone tipped them off. Croft didn't reply. She stood by a window, staring at the dark line of forest beyond the farm. The Bowens were gone, but not far. Not with 2 captives. Sweep the property, she ordered. Every building, every basement, they're close. At 9:47 p.m., the team found the underground room. The entrance was in the floor of the farthest barn, a concrete hatch hidden beneath a layer of hay. The construction matched what had been found at the mine, a hinged metal cover, a ladder descending into darkness. Jennings went down first. His voice came through the radio, muffled, like it was underwater. Basement, large, about 30 by 20 feet, concrete walls, low ceiling. There are 2 cots against the far wall. A pause. And, yeah, they're here. Alive. Caleb and Noah Richards lay on military-style cots in the far corner of the basement. Their hands and feet were bound with plastic zip ties. Duct tape covered their mouths. Both were conscious. Medics assessed their condition as serious but stable. Moderate dehydration, severe exhaustion, surface injuries, scrapes, bruises. Noah had a hairline fracture in his right ankle, likely from the fall into the shaft. Caleb had an inflamed cut on his forearm that had started to fester. 16 days. They had been held in that basement for 16 days. When the tape was removed, Caleb spoke first. "Where are they?" "The Bowens ran," Croft said. "We'll find them. Right now you need medical care." Caleb grabbed her wrist. His grip was weak but desperate. "You don't understand. They're still here, in the woods, watching. We heard them every night." "Heard who?" "The whistles. They signal each other, like birds, but not birds. They're all around." Croft looked at Noah. He nodded without speaking. In his eyes was something Croft had rarely seen in 15 years on the job. Not fear, but the certainty that fear hadn't ended. The brothers were airlifted to a Lexington hospital at 11:30 p.m. Croft stayed behind at the farm. Interviews could wait. First, they had to figure out where the Bowens had gone. 6 grown men don't vanish. They'd gone into the woods, but teams with dogs and thermal cameras swept the area around the farm. Nothing. At 2:00 a.m. on October 25th, Watkins approached Croft inside the mobile command unit. "My people picked up something odd," he said. "Northeast perimeter, not visual, audio." "What kind of audio?" "Whistling. High-pitched, short bursts. Then a pause, then a response from another direction. It moves. We tried triangulating, but the source keeps shifting." Croft remembered Caleb's words. They whistled to each other. "How many sources?" "At least 3, maybe more. They're moving in an arc around the farm, like they're hunting," Croft finished. That morning, Croft contacted Professor Donald Mason, an ethnography specialist at Appalachian University. She sent him the audio recording captured overnight. He called back an hour later. "That's Sylvan whistling," he said, "a form of whistled speech, an old communication system mountain communities used to talk over long distances. In terrain like this, sound carries better than voice, especially in dense vegetation. Each whistle is a word or a phrase. You can hold a full conversation." "How many people still know this?" "Officially, a handful. Men in their 80s who learned it from their parents. The language is considered dead." A pause. "But there are closed communities, clans that keep traditions alive. They don't advertise. For them, it's a way to talk so outsiders can't understand. Police, feds, rivals." Croft thanked him and hung up. The Bowens weren't just hiding in the woods. They were coordinating, using a language that had died a century ago. No radios, no phones, no signals in the air, just whistles drifting through the trees like birdsong. The search for the Bowens lasted 3 days. On the 4th, October 28th, the U.S. Marshals Service brought in a fugitive task force. By then, more than 50 personnel were involved, with helicopters, drones, and dogs. The perimeter expanded to 10 miles in every direction from the farm. The first to be found was Lyle Bowen, one of the nephews. He walked out of the woods on his own, exhausted and starving, onto a highway 12 miles south of the farm. He carried a hunting knife and a water flask. No firearm. During questioning, he said little. Uncle Earl said to split up, every man for himself. I left. Where are the others? I don't know. We split on the second day. Communication was only by whistling. I stopped hearing replies yesterday morning. Which way did Earl go? Lyle looked at Croft. There was no fear in his eyes, just fatigue. Toward the boundary. He always said, if it comes to it, head for the boundary. That's his land. He knows every hole out there. Boundary of what? Widow's Log, where the kudzu is. No one will find him there. On October 30th, U.S. Marshals located Earl Bowen 5 miles inside the kudzu growth. He was sitting on a rock beside the entrance to another ventilation shaft from mine number 7, a third access point unknown to maps or records. He was armed with a Remington 700 rifle with a scope, a Smith & Wesson pistol, a hunting knife, and a backpack stocked for a week. He did not resist. As marshals escorted him out of the vines, Earl turned to the man carrying his rifle. 40 years, he said. 40 years nobody came out here. He spat on the ground. Then those two showed up with a drone. He didn't speak again until he met his lawyer. The trial of the Bowen clan began on March 14, 2024, in federal court for the Eastern District of Kentucky. The indictment included 47 counts, manufacturing and distribution of controlled substances, kidnapping, 6 counts of murder, conspiracy to obstruct justice, and illegal possession of firearms. 5 defendants sat at the table. Earl Bowen, 67. His sons, Wesley, 34, Carter, 31, Jr., 28. His nephew, Lyle Bowen, 26. The second nephew, Brandon Bowen, 24, was found dead on November 2nd in a ravine 3 miles from the farm. Cause of death, hypothermia. He had become disoriented while trying to evade the search. Prosecutor Jennifer Hope laid out the timeline, reconstructed from witness testimony, drone footage, and physical evidence. The story began in 1983. Lester Richards, a solitary recluse living on the edge of Widow's Log, struck a deal with a young Earl Bowen, then 27. The Bowens were looking for a place to grow marijuana far from law enforcement. Lester's land was ideal, remote, impassable, and sitting atop an abandoned mine hidden beneath kudzu. The terms were simple. The Bowens used the land. Lester got a cut, about $30,000 a year in cash, according to Lyle. The note found in Lester's cabin, as usual, by the 15th, was a monthly reminder. He never went down into the mine, Lyle testified. Didn't want to know. He took the money and kept quiet. 40 years of quiet. When Lester died in January 2023, the Bowens had a problem. The land now belonged to his heirs, some city relatives from Ohio. Earl assumed they'd never come, that the property would get tied up in inheritance issues for years, like so many rural parcels, that he'd have time to move the operation. He was wrong. On October 8, 2023, Wesley Bowen spotted a black SUV with Ohio plates on Log Hollow Road. He called his father. Earl told him to watch. Wesley followed the Richards brothers to the edge of Lester's property. He saw them launch a drone, saw them head on foot toward the kudzu. I figured they'd look around and leave, Wesley testified. Nobody goes in there. You can't walk through it. But the brothers did. They found the clearing. They found the concrete slab. They found the hatch. Wesley called again. Earl arrived with Carter and Jr. They took positions at the edge of the clearing and watched. When one of them fell into the pit, Dad said that was it, Wesley said. They were witnesses now. We didn't plan to trap them. The land did that on its own. The trap, a concealed hatch that opened under body weight, had been installed 20 years earlier, after the first outsider stumbled onto the grow. That outsider became the first body in the grave. The brothers were pulled from the shaft alive. Earl faced a choice. Killing them meant 2 more bodies and a guaranteed investigation once they were reported missing. Letting them go meant police, the DEA, and the end of everything. He chose a third option. Time. Dad wanted to move the crop and relocate the bodies, Lyle testified. Then stage an accident, sink their car in a river, send everyone chasing the wrong story. We needed a week, maybe 2. They didn't account for the drone. It hovered over the clearing, recorded Noah's fall, began its return, and snagged in an oak tree. The Bowens searched for it, never found it. Kudzu hid the machine as completely as it hid everything else. And then law enforcement arrived. Identifying the bodies from the mine took 4 months. All 6 victims were confirmed through dental records and DNA. All 6 were men between 24 and 41 years old. All had ties to drug trafficking in neighboring states. The first victim, Dwayne Peters, 31, of Knoxville, Tennessee, vanished in 2007. A courier for a local gang, he allegedly tried to negotiate a partnership with the Bowens. His body had been buried deeper than the others. The last victim, Marcus Delaney, 29, of Roanoke, Virginia, disappeared in April 2023, 3 months after Lester Richards' death. A small-time dealer who heard rumors of an abandoned grow in Kentucky and went looking for it. Delaney showed up in April, Lyle said, asking questions around the county. Carter tracked him. Dad said he knew too much. They took him to the mine. Between the first and last body, 16 years, 6 murders. On average, 1 killing every 2.5 years. The Bowens weren't serial killers in the classic sense. They were businessmen removing threats. Caleb Richards testified on the 3rd day of trial. He sat in the witness chair, 20 pounds lighter, dark circles under his eyes, hands trembling as he tucked them beneath the table. Noah sat in the gallery on crutches. His ankle fracture had healed incorrectly. Another surgery was pending. "Tell us what happened after you were pulled from the shaft," the prosecutor asked. Caleb stared past the jury, past the defendants, at a blank spot above the judge's head. "They took us to the farm, put us in the basement. It was dark, cold. They brought water and food once a day, sometimes less. They didn't talk. They just came in, checked on us, left." "Did they threaten you?" "No, that was worse. They looked at us like a problem, something to be solved. We weren't people, we were interference." "Did you hear anything unusual while you were held?" Caleb paused, then nodded slowly. "The whistling, every night, high-pitched, sharp. It started far away, then closer, and answers from other directions, like we were being surrounded, like they were hurting us, even though we were already trapped." "Did you understand what it meant?" Caleb looked at Earl Bowen, the first time he had done so. "Later. Yes, it was their language. They were talking, planning what to do with us, and we heard every word without understanding a single one." On June 15, 2024, the jury returned its verdict. Earl Bowen, guilty on all 47 counts. Sentence, life without parole plus 120 years. Wesley Bowen, guilty on 39 counts. Sentence, life without parole. Carter Bowen, guilty on 35 counts. Sentence, 85 years. Junior Bowen, guilty on 28 counts. Sentence, 60 years. Lyle Bowen, guilty on 19 counts. Cooperation noted. Sentence, 35 years, eligible for review after 20. Earl Bowen stood as the sentence was read. His expression never changed. Lester Richards' land was seized as a crime scene and transferred to federal ownership. The entrance to mine number 7 was sealed with steel plates. The grow operation was dismantled, the equipment destroyed. The kudzu that had been cleared for the investigation grew back within a single summer. By October 2024, the clearing where Noah Richards fell had vanished beneath a green carpet, as if it had never existed. Caleb and Noah returned to Cincinnati. Their firm, Richardson & Richards Design, closed in January 2024. Neither brother was able to return to work. As of November 2024, Caleb was undergoing treatment for PTSD. Noah had undergone a second ankle surgery and was preparing for a third. When asked by a reporter what he thought about the land they had inherited, Caleb said, "We wanted to sell it, just sell it and forget it. 70 acres of forest we didn't need. Turns out that forest had been waiting 40 years for someone to walk into it." Detective Melanie Croft continued working in the Kentucky State Police Investigations Division. In an interview after the trial, she recalled the night at the Bowen farm, the first time her team heard the whistling. "We thought we had them boxed in. Perimeter, dogs, thermal cameras, everything. She paused. They were sitting in the dark, talking to each other in a language that died 100 years ago, laughing at us. One of the whistles, according to Professor Mason, meant blind puppies. That's what they called us. She fell silent again. "You know what stays with me?" she said. "That trap Noah Richards fell into. It sat there for 20 years, waiting for someone to step in the wrong place. Land like this doesn't forgive. It remembers. And when you think you own it, it reminds you who really does." In December 2024, the Kentucky Forestry Service conducted a routine inspection of the former Richards property. The report noted regrowth of kudzu, partial collapse of old structures, and no signs of human activity. There was one detail no one followed up on. At the edge of the vines, 200 meters from the sealed mine entrance, the inspector found a fresh footpath, narrow, nearly invisible, but clearly human. The trail disappeared into the kudzu after 30 feet. Next to its entrance, carved into a tree trunk, was a symbol, a circle with a vertical line through the center. The mark was fresh. The inspector photographed it, logged it, and left. No one returned to the site.